Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sankofa Session 3. We are going to be talking about Black Lives Matter and the current future guard of the movement. We're continuing our conversation from the Civil Rights Movement to the Black Power movement, and now we're talking about the Black Lives Matter movement. A nice continuation for the Sankofa K-12 Outreach Black History Month program. I'm Theodore Ransaw, Outreach Specialist for the Office of K-12 Outreach, and we're going to have introductions from Dr. Brian Beverly, the Director of K-12 Outreach.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is my esteemed pleasure and honor to be with such a distinguished panel. A huge hat tip to Dr. Ransaw for his diligent work in pushing the Sankofa project and all of our Black History Month programming forward. Want to remind folks of our Black History Month teaching resource guide that went out to every district in the state, as well as a number of other stakeholders. Please refer to that. We are also excited to bring forth a Women's History Month program following this Black History Month program, and we'll be putting out another series of resources for teachers to use in teaching some women's history in their classrooms. And we'll be following that with a series of interviews from educational leaders promoting women in leadership. I want to, again, thank everyone who has participated in these sessions to this point. The previous sessions were very enlightening, particularly as it relates to, as Ted mentioned, the journey from the Civil Rights Movement through the Black Power movement into the Black Lives Matter movement. And now as we talk about beyond and what is next to come, I'm eager to hear from each of our panelists today. Grateful for their time, grateful for the time, the energy, and effort of our esteemed moderator, Representative Sarah Anthony, who's representing my hometown, Lansing, Michigan. Big shout out to Representative Anthony, and thank you for being here as well. Thank you all for participating. Big shout out to Sam Anklin, who's always providing some great technology support in the background. I'm looking forward to a great conversation today. Ted, back to you.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for joining us, everyone. So to get things started, we're going to play a brief video clip, and then we're going to come back and introduce the panelists and our moderator. So without further ado, Sam, can you click the clip?
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory has won.
Black Matter is a direct descendant of our movement. The difference is they got cell phones and cameras. If we had had cell phones and cameras, God knows what we could have done. Black Lives Matter started marching immediately when they saw George Floyd's death. And it's not a matter of defunding the police. It's a matter of rethinking law enforcement. And that little difference, the Republicans have rallied, well, I shouldn't say Republicans, just say racists have rallied the country against Black Lives Matter because of a few slogans that they distorted.
Some of the most courageous persons during the movement days were people like Dorothy Cotton, Fannie Lou Hamer, as an example, Coretta Scott King, another example. These are women I knew and that I worked with during the movement days. As a matter of fact, it was Septima Clark who really tutored me on racial discrimination in the South. Septima Clark, Fannie Lou Hamer, Dorothy Cotton, Jean Young, all very brave women who was apparently involved, well, not apparently, they were involved in the movement for social change in the South. So women have not received credit. And I think my black brothers have been a little chauvinistic in that regard. Never received credit for the work they've done in the movement.
Now, you mentioned the Black Lives Matter. The sisters, of course, they've had to deal with brothers who just couldn't get to first base with regard to awareness. And they've gone ahead and ironically, on the heels of the death of often Black men, these sisters have come together to spread the word and to awaken us. But what I fear is that elites will cherry pick some of the objectives of the Black Lives Matter movement. And they'll try to move the movement away from a real analysis of things that should be done that have to do with social class. You have to get up each morning, take a deep breath, and push forward, because the only way you can change things is through struggle. But boy, do we have our work cut out for us. And the Black Lives Matter have bitten off a big piece, but we'll see how successful. There's so many forces that are trying to silence some of their messages, and I don't have a clue whether or not they'll be able to break through. They've certainly made it easier for us to stay alive.
Wow, thank you. It's always good to have historical perspective. So I think everyone is familiar with Ambassador Andrew Young. Dr. Green, the gentleman that came right after Ambassador Andrew Young, was a former dean here at Michigan State. He was the first Black dean in the College of Education, and he worked for SCLC alongside Ambassador Young somewhere between 65 and 67, took a leave of absence from MSU and came back. And then Dr. Cross is the gentleman who created the African American Identity Model, which was one of the largest and first psychological perspectives of Black thought and intellectualism. And so having them comment sets the tone, I think, for a lot of things that happened in the past and where we are today. So shifting on into our panel, I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then I'm going to let Representative Sarah Anthony say a few words. And I know that we have to respect Sarah Anthony's time. I think she has a commitment later on today. So what I'll do is I'll just introduce the panelists. I'll let them respond to the video clip, and I'll turn it over to State Representative Sarah Anthony. Does that make sense? All right, so Raven Jones Stanbro, she is one of the brightest stars that Michigan State University College of Education has. She, as you can tell by her face, it lights up as she smiles. She has been doing this work, a teacher as well as a professor, and I respect teachers who are also professors and do research. So she doesn't just talk the talk, she walks the walk. We also have Lisa Reeves. She's the Chief Communications Officer for the College of Education. She's been doing things for, she's been written books about spirituality. She's a leader and thought-provoking inspirationist with regards to Black women and leadership and spirituality across the board. We also have Angela Waters Austin. Angela has been I want to say she's been in the forefront of things, social movements in Lansing for at least the last 5 years. She's one of the founders of Black Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter across the state. And she is also the leader of One Love Global, which does amazing outreach and has relationships with the Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Framework. Excellent work with that. And then Sarah Anthony, who is a state representative. She has been out in the community, not only as a politician, but as well as doing things in the community as well. And I can't think of any better panelists that we could possibly have to talk about these issues. I'll let the panelists introduce themselves, respond to the clips, and then we'll turn it over to State Rep Sarah Anthony.
Thank you, Dr. Ransaw. I just wanted to give a warm welcome, Detroit, what up, though, to all of you on today. Yes, Dr. Beverly, I just did that. As Dr. Ransaw shared, my name is Raven Jones Stanbro, and I'm currently in the Department of Teacher Education at Michigan State University. Go green, go white. I've been bleeding green and white since I was 17 years old as an undergraduate student. Yes, I saw that reaction, Dr. Ransaw. So happy to be here with all of you on today. Just some preliminary thoughts that I had in responding to the video. I'm always grateful to hear others share and acknowledge the work, the tireless work of Black women. I'm very proud to be a Black woman. I come from a wonderful line of Black women storytellers and educators. So it was really inspiring to hear some of the names mentioned in the clip and to be able to connect that back to my education and training here in Detroit as a Detroit public education student, who I've been a student of many other Black women who made sure we knew these women's names, who made sure that I recognized them as inventors, as social political activists, and so many other titles that we bear. And so it's just a wonderful experience to be able to be in a room with others who acknowledge and understand the longstanding history and just affordances that have been able to happen on the backs and through the co-creating and co-construction of Black women. I personally take it as a charge for my role with uplifting and preserving historical content and context of Black women is to make sure that I'm offering up their names, speaking their names, and sharing their narratives with the students that I teach, whether that's in Detroit, at MSU, in the teacher preparation program, and as a mom of a 6-year-old Black woman, Black young girl. So I'm happy to continue to be in conversation and to just see what kind of intersectional just rearings that we can all bring to bear. And I'll just stop there.
Well, good afternoon. I am Lisa Reeves, and thank you for allowing me to participate this afternoon with all of you. Dr. Ransaw, thank you again for inviting me. Just a little bit about myself. I have been in higher ed for over 30 years. And so my way of higher ed is through Wayne State, Oakland University, and now I'm at Michigan State University. Originally from Cleveland, Ohio, but I tell folks that Cleveland, Detroit, it was an easy transition for me to move to the Detroit area simply because I'm an inner city girl at heart from Cleveland, and it's very, very similar. The clip itself, well, let me back up a little bit. Actually, my background is such that I've always been in higher ed and always been interested in education, because I understand in terms of for women and for many, especially within my family, what it took to just get halfway to the table, not long at the table. And education was certainly the way for them. I've always had a very deep respect and wanted to know the stories. What gave them courage? What gave them the strength so that they could do these things? So for me, my background started out in finance, actually, and I came the way from accounting, financial analyst, and actually my current title is chief of staff. And so I'm responsible for the administrative functions of the College of Education. And so what I find in this role, which I've been doing this type of work for many years, is that it's not always Black women that are doing this type of work. I don't always see Black women at the table making these decisions. So for me, early on, it planted a seed to want to know, for those who have, what did it take for them to get there? What seeds were planted in them? Did their faith have anything to do with their self-determination to help them to get through this, to navigate through the waters? So when I think about the clip, the people in the clip, I've been fortunate. I've been in the presence of some of those folks, Andrew Young, Dr. Green, and listening to them. But when I just start thinking about how the clip started, the words that come to me are facing the rising sun. Facing the rising sun, let us march on. And for me, my mother planted in me, and I try to plant into my daughter, you gotta face it. You gotta get up, you gotta show up, you gotta face the rising sun. And we gotta march on. So for me, and when I think about Black women, it's a matter of showing up. It's a matter of being bold, being courageous, and remembering. Knowing the story and remembering it, keeping it in front of us, because it's so easy to forget what people came through. And it's knowing the story and being bold and courageous, which helps to fuel the leadership to be able to do this work, and then to bring others along. So those are some of my thoughts. I am certainly looking forward to participating, to listening, and to engaging. And it's Black History Month. And so certainly it's a wonderful time. Thank you.
Should I just jump in here?
Please do.
Okay. What up though, Raven? Yeah, home squad. And thank you, Lisa, for your insights, both of your insights on this video. It was a awesome video to watch. And before I give my response to it, I want to give a proper introduction. Just to expand a little bit on what Dr. Ransaw shared, and thank you for inviting me into this space to be a part of this celebration of powerful Black women. I am grateful to be among you and to be able to listen and to learn from you today, and also to share. I am a caramel Black woman with a center part. I am wearing kind of purplish burgundy glasses with a similar colored lipstick. I have on a gray shirt. And in my background is a graphic that says Black Women Are Divine, which is a Black Lives Matter campaign that we will be celebrating the weekend of March 11th, following one of my favorite Black women's birthday, Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman Day is one of my favorite days. So yay to that. And so I'll respond to the end of the video, because my response was, oh, challenge accepted, challenge on. Can Black Lives Matter break through? You have to realize that we're 10 years in to a response to Black Lives Matter, that even the words Black Lives Matter were an affront to democracy, were anti-American. And just for Black Lives Matter to be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize after a global uprising that really, according to scientists and researchers such as yourself, is the largest global social movement in history. And it could not have happened without the women that we saw in that video. And I want to lift up Ella Baker, because she sold into the youth, not come and be a part of us, but how do we seed you to build your own? And that is what inspires me, and what I do at One Love Global, and what I am excited to be able to do as the new Director of Operations and Policy for Black Lives Matter Grassroots, which is our global formation of chapters. To be able to build the power of a Black youth vanguard is a tremendous blessing, responsibility, and I know because of faith, Lisa, that it is the way that we break through. Because I'm 53 years old. We're an intergenerational movement. I'm a boundary spanner. So shout out to Elder T and Queen Lee Taylor, who lift me up and hold me up, to my sisters who are in Black Lives Matter leadership, who pour into me every day. And having that community of sisterhood, I know it existed then. We lift each other up, we celebrate each other, and we don't mind carrying the load. We don't mind being the first. And what I am particularly grateful for is the acknowledgement. And I am hoping that this conversation and many more will lead to more of our brothers showing up with us, standing shoulder to shoulder with us, and protecting us. If you haven't noticed, fascism isn't attacking any Black people, it is specifically attacking Black women. We are at a place where, once again, like Fannie Lou Hamer, bringing everything that she had, bringing her song, bringing her trauma, bringing the scars from being beaten and kidnapped and caged, straight to the seat of power. And just think what it meant for a president to try to preempt her and to silence her by the power of media. And in his attempt to do that, he made her famous. What was it that Fannie Lou Hamer had to say that he was so afraid of? You wouldn't see the rise of fascism and every headline about Black Lives Matter and some Black women if there weren't some people who were very afraid of what we had to say. And not just what we have to say, the work that we do. So I just want to say thank you for making this the topic of this conversation and centering it in education, because that is under attack right now. You all are the vanguards of our children's education and letting that education be grounded in truth. There is a move, an organized move towards fascism, to erase truth, to erase history, and to indoctrinate children into an idea of white supremacy that is a delusion. And nothing but the truth and nothing but faith will come against it, stand against it, and I believe that we will win. Thank you.
I feel like going somewhere marching or something. Thank you for that, panelists, and thank you, Angela. I think to make sure that we honor Representative Sir Anthony's time, I think we'll turn it over to you. Does that work for you?
Of course, and we don't have to rush. They used to me being on CP time. They know I'm coming late. I mean, what? So listen, thank you for allowing me to moderate this. I almost felt like I should moderate. I just to be here listening to wisdom. You know, one of the best things about being state representative is I get to have a day like today. And I want to just share a few just snippets of what my day has looked like so far. Just moments ago, I came from a meeting with SEIU, a labor organization that in many ways feels like the one I'm most connected with. It was a Zoom call with about 20, 25, mostly Black women. And these are healthcare workers, these are janitors, security officers, folks who take care of our loved ones, the folks who are on the sick and shut-in list. And they're thinking about ways to organize and have a minimum wage, even a living wage for themselves, so that they can not only pour out and take care of our family, but also their own after working 15, 20-hour shifts. Now, the Zoom before that was one with my AKA sisters in a chapter that is in another part of the state. And they wanted me to come on to talk about the Crown Act, right? This act that basically says you cannot discriminate because of the way God makes our hair in its kinks and curls and locks and twists, right? And they wanted me to come on and talk about ways that they can advocate so that bill can move through. And that was a powerful conversation, about 100 folks on that Zoom call. And then first thing this morning, I was at a local Ingham County Democratic event honoring someone who is retiring. And not a single Black woman, to my knowledge, is running for local office or running to replace me in this role as state representative. And so all of these kind of layers, whether it is workers who are on the ground, on the forefront, just trying to survive, or college educated women of Alpha Kappa Alpha who are looking at ways to make workplaces and education spaces more inclusive, or these spaces in which in many ways my mere existence is one that is both a threat, but also I'm trying to lift as I climb, and I can't find folks to actually step up and run for local office, to continue the work of the Fannie Lou Hamers and continue the work of the Shirley Chisholms, which you can probably see her in pink and green up here, right? So I love this conversation, right? Because it's one that is blending our experiences as Black women in the civil rights movement and also in the boardrooms and in the halls of power. And I think that we're at this interesting place in our history, that we have women, you know, that are represented in all of these different factions and in different spaces. And it's teeing up to my first question for the panelists. And I'll speak slowly, so because we didn't prepare which questions it was going to be, but I know you all, you stay ready, right? You stay ready, middle parts and curls, and you stay ready. So we talked about the fact that, for example, Black Lives Matter, this is not something that just came about 1, 2, 3 years ago. This is a decade-long movement now. We have Trayvon Martin's death, his murder anniversary yet today. So we're 10 years from that. And we also know that in 2020, many of us who have been doing this work around equity and inclusion and diversity, we finally got some folks to actually wake up and support. Every company, every business had these perfectly curated Black Lives Matter statements on their ice cream boxes, and NFL and Ben & Jerry's and educational institutions. And now you can't find those on their websites. It's almost like, you know, after the first of the year, when you go to the gym and the gym is crowded because everyone kind of woke up and said, maybe it's time for me to work out and to lose those pounds. And then in March, it slows back down and people get complacent. And all of a sudden your favorite treadmill opens back up and you look to your left and your right and you continue to see the same thing happening. And all those folks who were vulnerable in 2020, who marched, who protested, who put themselves out there, the consultants were hired, the resources, maybe a few mini grants to Black folks and Black organizations. My question to our panelists is, in the shadow of 2020, we're now in 2022, what has changed and what has stayed the same? Anybody can start, but what, if anything, changed after this uprising we saw in 2020? And what has remained the same? Hey, Dr. Beverly.
I was gonna say I went last, so I'll go first this time. I had a little more time to think before, so I'll give my fellow panelists a little bit more time. So what has changed is organizing has resources. Movement has resources that it didn't have. And if you think that it's an accident or a coincidence that far-right media headlines are focused on money, then you understand that money to some people equals power. It's a tool. It's a tool that strategically applied after 10 years of organizing and strategic visioning and base building has an impact around the world. That's what's changed. What hasn't changed is empire. What hasn't changed is the delusion of white supremacy. What hasn't changed is the belief that change and progress has to be incremental. What hasn't changed is respectability politics. What hasn't changed is classism. What hasn't changed is a misalignment of movements that together can be the power that we need to disrupt, to dismantle, and above all, to rebuild. This is a time for renaissance. This is a time for vision. Movement has spent 10 years examining, studying, protesting, writing, researching, speaking, to understand fully what opposition looks like, how messaging gets co-opted and twisted into disinformation. 10 years of what people are now coming to understand is at the core of democracy. The law sweeping the country to criminalize protest are fundamentally an attack on the core of what America says that it's about. The very foundation of America is what's at stake. And it's not about left or right anymore. That's not even the right conversation. It's not about Dems or Republicans. It is about democracy or fascism. That's what needs to change. We have to fundamentally and very quickly understand that when we see oligarchs across the world with the ability to determine the course of a global economy, the amount of money that the US is investing in the military after the fights to put funds into infrastructure, after the fights to build America back better. No one is questioning how much money is going into the military right now. So what hasn't changed is that we still need to come together across ideology, across class, across our lived experience, to actually build the kind of unity that is going to be necessary to hold on to the shreds of an incomplete idea of democracy. Sorry for such a long answer.
Raven or Lisa?
Raven, do you want to go next?
You can go ahead. You can go ahead.
Okay. So Angela, wow, you make it hard to go right after you now. Okay. So just bear with me a little bit because I think you gave the complete answer. But what I would add to what you said, in terms of when I think about the question of what has changed and what is the same, I tell you, for me, what is the same is that power is always power. It's going to exist. And it's a matter of who has the power. That's always going to be there. What's the same? I think it's fear. Fear of who holds the power, who will keep the power. And so now what we're seeing, that there's some change. I mean, we all have to admit that right now things are changing. Just, was it yesterday? I mean, I'm going to look at my phone here, and President Biden, he has nominated Ketanji Brown Jackson, first Black woman to the US Supreme Court. Now, that's a change. This is a change. And we want to say thank you for that, because things are changing. We see that right now we do have a Black female vice president. I mean, I feel like I have to say this, it's Black History Month, and we're getting ready to go into Women's History Month. I feel that I have to say thank you, Representative Anthony. You are a Black woman and you are holding up and you are representing. Thank you. There are changes here. We didn't see all of this 10 and 15 years ago. So there are some changes. Some of the faces are looking different. The guards are changing. And I think because of that, what you're seeing is that there's fear. There's fear now because the power is shifting. And so I think what we have to do is, how do we now, in this time of a pandemic, because then a bomb just got threw out on all of us. It's like a jolt. It's like, okay, we're about to change for real now. Everybody, you in your house right now for 3 good months, shut down, change. Yeah, some things have changed since 2020. We know we don't have to go to work 5 days a week, every single day, and someone sees us. Things are changing. Representative Anthony, you did a lot today. And I imagine that this is not your only virtual meeting. We have now before us the opportunity to do things, but we still got to get out there. So what has stayed the same is that we got to be present. We still have to let our voices be heard. We still have to stand together and collaborate. We still have to respect one another. But we got to understand that because this power base is shaken, it's shifting, there are folks who do not want to see it shift. There are folks who do not want to see Black women in positions that they have not been in. When I mention about my passion, it's the spirituality, it's because there were places we just were not there. That Black self-determination of how did we get to those points? It was through our faith. And we had to have that faith to get to those points because we just weren't in those circles. So what has stayed the same? And Raven, I'm going to now slide this to you, but what I would say is what has stayed the same? God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. There will be trials. There will be tests. It's how do we come through them? Will we be bold enough? Will we be triumphant? We have to go through the tests. We got to go through them together. We got to be unafraid to speak up. We have to be able to show up. We have to remember, we have to know our story. It is our story. We have intersectionality in terms of being Black women. We have to know that. And here's the thing, I love being a Black woman, because it's how we do it. It's how. And I think folks just can't take their eyes off of us because of the way how we do it. It's just this special sauce. It really is. And it comes from the generations. I mean, I saw something yesterday that said, we aren't just mamas. I mean, we are cooks. We were lawyers. We were doctors. We counselors. I mean, we have the ability, hey, we Supreme Court justices, we VPs. We are a lot of things. People can't take their eyes off of us. And so together, what we have to do in this moment of what's changing is that now we have to be able to be collaborative together more so because we have so much power. So what has stayed the same? We've always had it in us. We've always had it in us. But we have to work together. It hasn't changed. So there you have it, Raven. Those are my thoughts.
Bless all of you. And let me just shout out my co-panelists and Representative Anthony. It was really inspiring to hear about your whole full day, and it's only 3:45. So salute to you, sister, for keeping it going and just for being such a wonderful representation of Black excellence as all of us are. And so some other thoughts that I just like to contribute in terms of what has stayed the same, I think, is our innate ability to resist and to fight by any means necessary. I think that a lot of us, no matter where you come from or, just like your socioeconomic status or your background, you know what it means to fight and to resist, whether it's by way of your family lineage, the stories that have been told, the struggles from just struggle to triumph, to being able to triumphant over different issues. And I remember just when I first heard about Trayvon Martin, and I remember immediately after that engaging in a march that was held here in Detroit with one of my colleagues, Dr. April Baker Bell, shout out to her, who is a wonderful professor at Michigan State University. And at the time when Trayvon Martin was killed, she and I were in a graduate seminar course together for our doctoral programs at Michigan State. And we had a class with Dr. Django Paris. And I just want to give a shout out to, just the educators who allow their classroom spaces to be healthy and just safe representations for us to be able to collaborate, to cuss, to fuss, and to pray. Because sometimes that might be what it takes, right? Like, depending on where you are, when you wake up, the mood that you have 1 minute, and depending on what you deal with, your thinking might shift. So I feel like even within that, though, we know what it means to resist and to fight, and to understand that why it's important for us to do this. What has stayed the same is to continue to be harmed. Black women, we're continuing to be killed, even when we aren't doing anything wrong. So what are we going to do to stand up against all of these injustices, all of these just tired Black mamas? We tired, and I can say that now as a Black mother, and how I know I don't have time for my daughter to be harmed. Like, I know what I'm capable of doing that I can't say on this call right now, right? But I know that I can call on some of y'all if it needed to get to that point. So sometimes resistance doesn't look as pretty as we think that it might. And so I'm always just excited to learn from others and to collaborate so that we can push back against all of these all of these different injustices that, permeate different fields, whether it's education, whether it's health, whether, it's medicine, anything. So again, my specific charge is with teaching your children and your children's children. So I get the honor and privilege to teach teacher educators and to really push back and get on them about the language that they sometimes take into the classrooms. So I'll say right now, and I got a lot of my MSU colleagues on here, y'all know that a lot of my classrooms are filled with young white women who are going into the teaching profession. I have no problem with that. What I have a problem with is when you come in my class and you start saying certain things about Black people. When you start saying, we can't go to Detroit because my mom said, those people are dangerous. Oh yeah, I'm putting it out there. Because you can't do that in my class. But we're not going to do that. We're going to think about people in humanizing ways, and we're going to find different ways to respect each other. We're going to do some storytelling together. Y'all going to know who Septima Clark is. You're going to know your Fannie Lou Hamer. You're going to know all these Black women that have come over time and who we're still standing on their shoulders to advance the culture forward. If you're not doing that, then what are you even doing? When you wake up in the morning, if you aren't trying to figure out a way to collaborate or better the experience of your brother or your sister, stay asleep. Stay asleep, go to bed, find something else to do. Right now, what we need, folks who do not mind being radical, right? And that could look different. It could look different. It could look like you simply showing up to a protest. It could look like you writing a book. It could look like this right now, having this webinar where we're talking about these important issues. Right? What we don't need are people who are fake and phony in the movement. And what I respect and appreciate about Black Lives Matter and this younger generation is that they don't care. They don't have time to know that you are not fully present and going to represent the culture and going to represent what it means to push back against police brutality, racism, and all these other isms and ills that still permeate our lives and our culture every day. So I'm here to help advance that work in different kinds of ways. I'm here to say, you know what, you might not pass this class because your ideas, this ain't it, and You definitely aren't equipped to teach my child or my nieces and nephews or your children and your nieces and nephews. So sometimes we have to like take a step back and figure out, okay, how can we collaborate? How can we get some synergy going? And understanding that we all have different ideas, but knowing that collaboration is beautiful and is necessary, right? And so I'm just here to kind of represent that and speak for the tired mamas and to speak for those of us who are still educating our babies and trying to educate our villages and our communities. Even when people aren't showing up, even when teachers aren't teaching, we still have a responsibility to advance ourselves and our culture.
Ashe, listen, where's the collection plate? I got a mint jar. We can use that as a collection plate. This is outstanding, outstanding. So, you know, I had a question, but I actually picked a couple pieces from all three of the remarks. And I hope the question comes off the way it's intended or it's in my head. So many of y'all refer to women pioneers, women who have broken glass ceilings, who are leading organizations, right? So Black Lives Matter, this is led by powerful Black women. You know, we mentioned the Supreme Court nominee from yesterday, Kamala Harris, first, Black woman vice president. Even the students that you are teaching, Raven, many of them will come through the system and then become a first, right? First educator, first whatever. And oftentimes we need to hold these folks accountable, but to do so in love, right? So I with every, praise that our BLM founders has gotten, we've heard even Black men try to tear down, try to overanalyze and be hypercritical. We've seen, when Kamala Harris was running for president, she was not beloved by all of us in the community. Folks are still trying to pick at the legacy, but we all have a responsibility to hold everyone accountable. My question is this: how can we hold Black women in leadership accountable, but in love? How do we do that with fidelity, continuing to uplift the principles to get to what we need to get to for our people, but also not tear down and be destructive to Black women who obviously have different journeys to get to these first in these leadership positions? Anyone can start. I just call them back.
I'm going to jump in here, and this will be short. And this way, then Raven and Angela, you all could think a little bit. So I'll take that for you too. What I would say in terms of holding Black women accountable, but in love. Leadership is not easy. It just isn't. Oftentimes, leadership is lonely because it takes vision. It takes someone to be bold enough to step out and to do something that others may not be willing to do. It's always easy when you're not in that particular position to be on the sidelines and to be critical. I think that certainly in terms of accountability, there's compliance. And my training, as I mentioned earlier, I started out in finance, accounting, and there's compliance. There's policies, there's procedures. So, that's how my training is. And so I think that, yes, you have to have compliance. You have to be held accountable. When you are in those types of positions, people are looking at you. And so in terms of being that role model, you have to recognize that when you step out, that you lose some things that maybe once you had in terms of your freedoms to do certain things where you were not showcased. You now are in a position where you're watched, and you have to know that. You have to know that. But I must say that for me, when you say, but in love, I think that it's a matter of respect. Respect is what comes to my spirit. It comes out of me. I have to say it is respect. And I think that's just overall just human nature. how we treat one another, whether it be leaders, colleagues, faculty, with a student, folks in the neighborhood, with our kids. It's a matter of respect. How do we still build people up? Because life is not easy and you will make mistakes. And so it's a way to communicate with people. How do you communicate? I tell my children, and my kids are grown now, and it's funny because of course now I can tell them certain things because I'm not as tired. When I was tired, I can't even tell you what was coming out my mouth, especially after a long day of work. And, my husband wanted stuff, they wanted stuff. I mean, it's like really, but now I got a little bit of sleep. And what I tell them is this: you can get much further with honey than vinegar. It's a matter of respect. We're still all growing. And so when we take these positions in leadership, vice president, state rep, faculty member, chief of staff, director, sometimes you've never been in these type of roles before, so you're growing. We have to be careful. I mean, we don't have to be so critical of people as they are learning the job. It takes experience. I would say, State Rep Anthony, that right now, you're not the same state rep that you were your first month. I think right now, with your experience, you're able to walk in a room, you're able to discern some things and to speak up in a way right now that you just didn't do your first month because you had to grow into it. So there's a little bit of time, but there's respect, and that we got to keep that into the mix of things. Sometimes it's so easy to jump in and say what folks didn't do. So do we hold people accountable? Absolutely. Do we have to remind them of things? Absolutely. I'm not saying give folks a free pass to do anything, but it's how you communicate, how you treat people. I just think that is very important. That would be my comments.
Thank you. Angela Raven?
I can go next. So when I hear the word accountability, I think of honestly like my family and friends who check in with me and who I check in with them regularly. Like whether we have big positions or not, we just know that by human nature, sometimes we might get off course or we might just need. So when you say love, that really is the key. And it goes a long way. So, some ways that I think is just by checking in. Hey, how you doing? Are you resting? Look, let me send you this podcast of this thing that a Black woman started called the Nap Ministry, right? Because sometimes we aren't able to make the decisions that we need to make because we're tired, right? And so what does that mean? And so if you don't have proper rest, that means you might be dropping the ball somewhere else, whether it's in your family life, your work life. And I'm going to tell this quick story because one of my accountability partners, shout out to my college roommate, Tanisha Sanders. Oh my goodness. So y'all, when I became an RA in my undergraduate year, my sophomore year at Michigan State University, I had a transfer student from Clark Atlanta University, right? So it's move-in day for the sophomores. She moves in, she's from Detroit, all her wonderful Black woman excellentness, right? And I immediately hear all this loud music coming from the other end of the hallway. Now it's move-in day. We can't have the music that loud. So as the RA, I have to, being in this leadership role, go down the hall to tell this young lady that she got to turn her music down, even though she's used to playing her music at the volume in which brings her joy. So I knock on the door. Hey, sis. Hey, your music is too loud. You got to turn it down. We can't do this here. She like, oh, for real? Like, well, then we started talking about what her life was like at the other institution that she attended. But what I'm grateful for in that moment is that we learned so much from each other, right? Like, I was a little bit nervous to confront this Black woman that I did not know, who I know has her own story, who is probably already feeling some kind of way coming from an HBCU to a PWI, right? Right. So, there was some familiarity because we were both Black women, but we all have our own stories, but when we approach each other with love, I feel like we can get a little bit further than just antagonizing each other, than just, you know, talking about each other or kikiing when you're not really getting anything solved. So, you know, that moment taught me, like, it's okay to go out on a limb for yourself to represent the greater good, as long as you do it with love. And I tell you, to this day, she is one of my most favorite accountability partners. And we get a lot done for ourselves and our families because we recognize the importance in approaching each other with love, even when it gets a little bit difficult. Because we've had to have some difficult conversations, as I'm sure all of you have with family members and loved ones, right? But at what point do you just not say anything and watch them just kind of walk off the cliff? You know, you have to, that says something about you yourself. If you're saying you love somebody and you respect them, but you don't find time to check in with them. So I'm all about, like, checks and balances. And I try to extend that again to the classroom at the end of each class session, having the students complete an exit ticket, which is just a way of them sharing something that they have a question about, that they aren't clear about, or that they learned, or a favorite takeaway of the day, right? When you do those things more often, you can kind of get and understand what needs to happen next to build the synergy that you need. So again, just approaching folks in love and checking in a little bit more regularly, I think goes a very long way.
Okay, I'll bring it on in here. You know, Representative Anthony, my dear Sarah, your question hits me in a way, and I feel all the nuance of the question. And I'll just start by saying that accountability is an act of love. If I am not willing to be accountable to you, I really don't care what you think about me, nor do I believe that you have the power to bring any consequence for what I may or may not have done. If I am above the question, if I am above humility, if I am above correction, am I serving my people? As someone who is critiqued often by folks who are outside of movement, you know, I process it. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel good. Critique doesn't feel good, and it is a part of radical tradition. Critique is a part of radical tradition, and I say radical, I mean in the Angela Davis definition of the term, it's about grasping at the root. And it is an act of love when we come to one another and name, and in vulnerability. It takes vulnerability to say, you hurt me. I have been harmed. And I think the most harmful thing that we can do to one another is to gaslight one another. And none of us is perfect. We walk in the footsteps of one who was perfect, but none of us is perfect. None of us is above critique. And we don't always know or have access to Black people in power. And 3 minutes on public comment ain't it. So that's why community organizing is so important, because if we focus on the issue, on the impact, on the harm and the solution, it's not about the leader. It's not about the individual. It's not about attacking somebody's character or tearing them down. It is about how we as a community come together and we own the problems, that we own our shortcomings, and that we recognize that we need one another to solve them. And we have to lean into Black community and not trust empire to examine itself, to critique itself, or to correct itself. It is not going to do that. And sometimes when we work inside, and I say this as someone who works both inside and outside, Sometimes we have to take difficult positions. We have to make difficult choices. Sometimes we have to say no to things because it's a matter of principle. It is a matter of principle that I will not sit on a panel with a cop to talk about community policing. I will not give him the credibility to have a conversation that police should have a say in solving communal violence. I will not do it. That's a matter of principle. We need more leaders of principle. We need more leaders willing to take a risk, because far right crazy is not afraid to take a risk and it never sleeps. If we are not as bold as Cori Bush to say, this is what I stand for and this is what I'm bringing, and to see how people rally around those who are uncompromised, unbossed. I'm looking at the picture behind you. Those are the shoulders that we stand on, uncompromising. And we need to show up for our sisters in power so that they can be uncompromising, so that they can depend on us as a source of strength, so that they don't have to lean into establishment to compromise. And I'm preaching to my own choir right now. We can show up differently for each other. And I will show up differently for you, Representative Anthony.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, here's my next question. And we've talked about the Shirley Chisholms of the world, Fannie Lou, and I know all of us have our own sheroes, be them the national big names or your auntie, your mom, right? The woman down the street that helped to craft and shape who you are, gave you language, gave you validation. If you could impart words of wisdom to either your younger self about women in leadership, about this journey that you are on, right? So your younger self, let's say 12-year-old Raven, 15-year-old Angela, 18-year-old, I know Black don't crack. Y'all could be this age. Let me just start by saying that, okay? Say, Lisa, you could be 12. I mean, it's magic, right? It's just oils and butters. I can feel it through the screen, right? But if you could impart some words of wisdom, some advice, some the keys to another strong woman in leadership, right? What would that be? I often say, I don't want the next Black woman in leadership to have to go up the rough side of the mountain, right? You don't have to do that. There's pathways that have been set. You know, I would love to sit at the feet of a Shirley Chisholm and just learn her journey and how it was difficult or how it was easy or whatever. But if you could impart words of wisdom to a Black woman in leadership that will revolutionize the field that you occupy, what would you impart into her?
I'll start and I'll just briefly share. I would just suggest that they trust themselves and to find their village, right? Like, you know, no man is an island, no woman is an island. We are here because someone else has helped us dutifully along the way. Someone else took the time. You know, I wouldn't have had access to MSU at 16 years old if my advanced placement high school 9th grade English teacher didn't pay for my application to attend Spartan Debate Institute for 7 weeks, right? Like, I stand on the shoulders of my Black, super Black and proud women Detroit teachers from back in the day. And I would just tell myself or any other person coming up along the ranks to just trust yourself, right? Like, you have these thoughts and ideas for a reason. We're being reared and socialized in the way that we are for a reason. We are extending the work of our ancestors, and that makes me so proud, so proud. And I would just say to find your village. You're going to know right away if somebody is for you or not. Don't forsake that spirit, that Holy Ghost that's talking to you when you feel something about somebody else. That's not to say you can't give them another chance, but we know Sister Maya told us to, you know, when people show you who they are, you have to believe them. And that's something that I tell my daughter all the time. Like, I know you're only 6, but you have agency over your life, over your words, over the things that you want to do with yourself, right? Like, yeah, trust yourself, find your village, and commit to the causes that bring you joy and the causes that you care about.
That's good. That's good. Angela?
Yeah, I was a different kind of teenager. I would tell myself to just do you. I would tell my blue mohawk self at the age of 15 to be myself and to do myself, and I agree with you, Raven, to trust yourself. Keep reading. I was a voracious reader. I would tell myself to just keep reading everything. And to surround myself with people who see my value and my potential. I would tell them that if you have one good friend, you lucky. Being popular is not the goal. It's not the end game. To folks who are coming into movement, to the kids who are walking out of class right now, fighting for their own safety and who understand the power of collective action, I would say keep organizing, keep building, get your education regardless of what it is that you intend to do with your future. And by education, I mean all forms of education, formal and informal. Popular education, also known as organizing, that political education has transformed me in my thinking in ways that all the years of college did not. All of the courses and certifications, there is no education-like experience. And until you have actually walked in somebody else's shoes, your role is to be an ally. And yes, find your village, find your people, find yourself a political home where you know people will cover you and protect you so that you can be bold.
Love it. Do you? Lisa.
So, Representative Anthony, thank you. This is a really great question. And it's funny because I literally the other day, I think it was yesterday, maybe it was Thursday morning, I woke up early. And for me, in the morning, my antenna is up and I have so many thoughts that are coming to me. It's unbelievable. So if there's anything for me to get done, I like to do it in the morning because my mind is clear, it's open. And in the morning, I'm talking to myself. And there was something that came into my spirit. And I said to myself, you know, and I asked this question of myself, actually. I told myself this. I said, you know, when you were younger, there were things that you worried about that you didn't need to worry about. Mm-hmm. All you had to do was just trust in me. I had your back. Do the work. Literally, it was like trust me. So trust in God is what I would say. I can't trust in me because my mind, depending on what time of day it is, ain't no telling where we going. But I would say trust in the Lord. But not only that, I would say do not be afraid. And again, I know these are scriptures, but it's just true. I mean, it's how you live. You can't be afraid. And to live your life. I say to live your life and not to be afraid because my daughter's 28, and it amazes me some of the things that she does right now. And maybe it's just that generation, I don't know. But This is a child that when she was 25, she said, I think I'm going to just go on my own vacation. I'm going to go to a different country. I don't know the language, but I'm gone. I was like, are you sure? She says, absolutely. She sent me a video and they were singing in whatever language, singing happy birthday, because she was living her life. She has gone to Sri Lanka by herself. She's gone to Morocco by herself. She does not wait. During the beginning of the pandemic, she was living in California and she says, I think I'm about to leave here. I'm like, where are you going? Well, I think what I'm going to do is be a nomad. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that I don't have a home right now. So I'm going to live in Texas for a month. I'm going to go to Colorado. I'll be in New York. And then I'm not sure where I'm going to live. But it's exposure. And she's unafraid. And so when you're unafraid and when you have seen things, you are not going to get all caught up and ain't nobody going to fool you with some crap. Because you're going to say, wait a minute, you're going to grow up. You're going to know how to have critical thinking. And you're going to learn and have fun. So what I would tell my younger self, do not be afraid. Live. Do the work and trust. It's like planting seeds. When you plant that seed in the earth, it goes in the ground. It is dark. It is dirty. It is quiet. And you don't know what's going on. But if you nurture it, if you wait, you give it some water, you give it some sunshine, and you trust, it will harvest. Do not be afraid. That's what I would tell myself. And guess what? I am 18.
Yeah, I could tell. You can't rent cars. I could tell. I love that. I was literally writing these down because, I mean, trust yourself, finding your village, doing you, right? Honestly, trusting God, being unafraid to take those chances, take risks. I know that although these are our experiences and what we're kind of gathering, I could tell that the women who came before us probably had to also make those same affirmations. I just absolutely know it, right? Harriet Tubman was out there talking about, I just need to trust myself. I just need to do me, right? So now I know we have a few more moments and I wanted to see, would it be okay for us to open it up for questions? Because otherwise I could just, that's good, okay. Does anyone on the Zoom have questions for this esteemed panel? And you can just unmute yourself or you can raise your hand.
Each of you pointed to some folks in your family or in your history that have made an imprint on you. Could you share some of the best advice that you've received on your journeys? And Representative Anthony, you can answer that too.
Drink water. Mind your business. Keep your scalp oils. And treat everyone with respect. So, I mean, that has taken me a long way. You never know who you're talking to. You can start talking mess about somebody, come to find out that's the ex-husband. You know, always treating everyone with respect and dignity will always go a long way. It has taken me very far. So, respect.
Circle back to love. Like I'm a hugger. So COVID really got me hug deprived, and so I just believe in making sure that what I want from others, I'm giving that to them. I can remember being 15 and in high school at Henry Ford High School in Detroit, and there being this sign in my assistant principal's office that said, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. And that has always stuck with me and kind of forwarded how I've just moved about in the world. And I feel like, if my family and friends were on the call, they would say the same thing. So I believe that it's our duty, like Representative Anthony just said, to make sure that we're respecting others. And sometimes an extension of respect is love.
think also in terms of along the journey is having the ability to smile and have a conversation. We have so much in common with folks, and we just have to give the space to see it. And I tell you, today I went out this morning and I talked with two different women and two people who were completely different than who I am, completely different. But I had on a t-shirt before I had on a t-shirt earlier, and it said words matter. And I believe it does. Words matter. And so I'm always one, well, tell me, how are you, whatever. But one of the ladies that I was talking with, I said, so where are you from? Because right now, as someone mentioned, I'm in Florida right now. So I said, where are you from? She says, oh, I'm from up north. And I said, well, I'm from the Detroit area, and I wear it proud. I'm from Detroit. And she says, oh, that's where my husband's from. He's from right here. And I was like, oh, you must be, because that's a Detroit thing. You got to show them with me. Yeah, see where they from. I said, well, that's my husband. He's from up there too. I said, but I'm from Cleveland. And she says, really? She says, yeah. She says, I'm from Youngstown. And I said, okay. I said, Youngstown is a steel town. My dad worked for Republic Steel. And she says, really? She says, so did my father. I said, it used to be Republic Steel, then it was LTV. And I said, it wasn't an easy job. My dad worked third shift. He would come home, he would have burns on him. And she says, I know, that's how it was for my father. She had no idea. I had no idea. But here it is, this woman, completely, nothing that would signal that we had anything in common, but we had that in common. All we have to do is smile, share a little word, and you'll see that we're connected somehow. And a lot of times people think we're different, but we really are not different at all. We really are not. So that respect and just giving ourselves just a moment just to be friendly. I think along the journey, that has helped me most, because you get to know people and know different things. And then your world opens up a little bit, because there's so much more than what we just see every day. So along the journey, words matter and how we treat one another. I think that's very important.
Ooh, thank y'all for the gift of time. Like, I'm a sponge and I just listen and absorb everything. So it was hard to land on that piece of advice. But it's my mom. And it's about relationships, because that's what we're talking about, is we're human beings. And I believe that we all come from the same place and the same source. There's one creator and we are the creation. Mom told me that we don't always know what we want, and we gravitate towards people who may be dazzling, they may be funny, they have these larger than life personalities. I'm an introvert, so I tend to be drawn to people that have big personalities, and I just am in awe all the time. And so we kind of chase after the things that we want. And she's like, and that changes, and it can get us into trouble. What we want, our desires, to be led by our desires, can really get us into trouble. Sometimes it's more important to understand what you don't want and what you will not tolerate.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. What other questions do we have? Or if you don't have a question, a reaction to something that you heard today. I've been taking notes on my sticky, so.
I have a question.
Yeah.
All right, this is a question I'm gonna ask I'm gonna give a very brief story. So when I was an undergrad, my girlfriend at the time had a roommate, and my girlfriend roommate mother was visiting, and I walked in and I was so excited about this Black Power class that I was taking, Dr. Spencer, University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I'm like, Black Power, Black people, yeah, right, had my boots on, I was ready to go, I'm all excited, I'm telling everybody about this class. They're all right. Can we just sit down and eat lunch? I'm like, all right, let me tell you about this class, right? And so the mother looked at me and said, you know, I used to take notes for Stokely Carmichael. And I was like, no, I didn't know that. Now, I don't exactly remember what happened. I remember I grabbed her arm, and the next thing I know, we were sitting in a diner. I don't remember what happened in between. I don't know how she got there. I don't know if I kidnapped her or what. But anyway, so I'm sitting with her, and I'm sitting across the table from her, right? So she's from Oakland, right? And so she watched everything happen, right? And so two things that she told me stuck with me, and it's been banging in my head, as Baldwin would say, banging like a drum in my head since then. Two things she said. The first thing, she said that the reason why she joined the Black Panthers and a lot of other women did is because she thought that Stokely Carmichael was fine. The second thing that she told me is that the reason why she stayed in the Black Panthers is because for the first time in her life, she felt safe around white men. So I bring this to you, right? We've heard all these stories about the civil rights movement. We've talked about the Black Power movement, and we're transitioning and having this deep discussion about Black Lives Matter, right? Where in this conversation can we extend the idea of Black love? Because that's something I don't think we've covered today.
That's an excellent question, Dr. Ransaw. That's what I was really getting at about having a Black political home inside of movement is, you know, where that covering that you just described, that sense of safety, and not to say that it's perfect, you know, we're people, you know, people are crunchy, but to be able to be your full self, scars and all, to be in a space that centers your Blackness, that lifts up Black joy, that endeavors and strives to continue to get it right when we get it wrong, that always leans towards relationship, that leans towards the greater vision, Black love, that we're willing to be transformed in the service of the work. And I'm quoting Dr. Mary Hooks, Reverend Mary Hooks, I should say. And that's the demand for Black people at this time. So for me, Black love is all the things that we bring, that we gather from our ancestors, including our living ancestors. So, you know, connecting back to the video that we saw at the beginning, honoring our elders who are still in movement, who are still guiding us. But it's our duty. The best demonstration that I can give to our people in terms of what Black love means to me is to be a good ancestor. And that means what I'm sitting in and what I'm doing right now every day when I get up. Black love is why I do what I do, because it's not about what benefits me, it's about the future generations that will benefit. So for me, that's what Black love really looks like.
You know, immediately when you asked the question, I thought about it in terms of generations. So, you know, I am blessed to, again, be surrounded by a lot of young people. And so I just try to speak their language a little bit, even when I don't understand certain things or the phrasings or how they are now. They just know how to do so much with technology. And I don't want to miss out on that. So I think, you know, in terms of whatever our discipline is, it's really important for us to tap into the young people who are around us, because we know that they are the generation that's going to continue to carry things forward. But in addition to making sure that I'm listening to young people and learning, you know, the things that are important to them, whether it's through song. Austin, Angela, you said something really paramount about reading. So, curating different playlists. So I am like the family storyteller. So I send out playlists related to different genres so that, the women and the children in our family can have something to listen to when they're working, when they're playing, when they're creating, or just even tapping into like the older generation within my family and making time to go and visit my mom's sisters to show them different things with the computer, right? Because it's just a lot that they're still expected to do that is a miss at times because they might not be as comfortable. So just not judging folks because I think they should know something, but just, again, really meeting them where they are. I think that's really, really important, no matter what you look like and where you are. So my Black love is an extension of just being myself and being vulnerable at times. And that looks different per generation.
I would add one in regards to generation and say that for me, what Black love is something that's authentic. It's safe. It's a space where it's like hot cornbread and greens. You can just kind of wallow in it and you just feel good. It's for me, it's that auntie that took me under her wings, who gave me love, that family that picked me up when my mom and dad wasn't taking me to church, but they picked me up. They gave me a love that was just unbelievable. It was that neighborhood love. It was that love that I could be a child, even in the inner city, in the midst of all the stuff that was going on around me. They poured in me that love and that confidence that, guess what? You can do anything because we believe in you. Black love for me it's a duty now. It's my turn and I have to now do the same thing. So for me, those aunties that came to my mom's house and they would sit around and they would drink coffee and they would listen to gospel music, or they would just listen to Motown. Or on Sundays, we would have our cornbread and some greens. It's that feeling of you can be whoever you are because it's no judgment. It's no judgment here. That's what I think of about Black love.
Dr. Ransaw, and hi, Sarah Anthony, Representative Anthony. Good to see you again. I just had a comment. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Ransaw for all of these Sankofa presentations, and I've had the privilege of sitting in on each and every one that you've had on each Saturday, and they have been phenomenal. So I want to thank you for organizing this, and Michigan State University. The second thing I wanted to say is that I just recently completed reading a book called The Three Mothers by Anna Tubbs. And if you have not read The Three Mothers, or if you don't know about it, it's about the mothers of Martin Luther King Jr., James Baldwin, and Malcolm X. And people do not know the names of their mothers, but they should know the names. Alberta King, Louise Little, and Bertus Baldwin. These are Black women who molded men who shaped a nation. And so I heard the panelists say that they have children. And I can see that by the walk and the talk that each of you have children, that you are modeling the behavior that you want your children to exhibit in this world. Just like Alberta King, just like Louise Little, just like Bertus Baldwin. They modeled resilience, unbelievable resilience, extraordinary courage. And I am so happy that this author told their story, because there are things in this book that I did not know, but it's things that every parent should know about how to raise a child so that they can become somebody, so they can reach their full potential and even reach the potential that Martin Luther King, reached, Malcolm X, and of course, James Baldwin. So thank you again, Dr. Ransaw. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you, I want to say Dr. Anthony, but Representative Anthony, for asking such thought-provoking questions. Those were all really excellent questions. And happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month to you too. Louise Little, one of Malcolm's nieces, and I are in constant communication, and she gifted me a book about his mother. It is amazing, but I did not know about the three mothers. So that is now on the list. And we're now hours away from transitioning from Black History Month to Women's History Month, as Lisa mentioned earlier. So what a time to actually squeeze that into my book list, right? So my reading list is now complete. So I think that wraps up our time, but I will not be the one to do closing remarks. I will defer to Dr. Ransaw. But thank you for the opportunity to serve as moderator today. This was amazing. I felt more like just someone who was just listening and getting imparted into. So thank you for this opportunity to be a part.
Thank you for taking time from your schedule to help us out with this. I really appreciate it. Everyone said that you're the best moderator in the state, and now I know that by proof. I believed it from the very beginning. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We appreciate that. We are close to our time. Thank everyone for joining, and I will let my boss, Director Brian Beverly, walk us out. And I would like to restate and say thank you to Dr. Beverly for allowing me to do a space like Sankofa. Not too many bosses would help. I came up with the idea. He thought about it and said, well, what can I do to support? And he's come through and helped out for every session, done things behind the scenes. Sam has done a lot with the tech, helping with the flyer and the program. We've had a whole office that just went hands on deck to make things happen. And I cannot leave without giving you a highlight that we're going to do some Women's History Month programming soon. We are working on that as we speak. Dr. Brian Beverly.
Thank you, Dr. Ransaw. Thank you to Representative Anthony for moderating a fantastic session. Thank you to each of our panelists. My heart is full from today's discussion. I am eager to go run downstairs and pour into my four daughters and share some of the insight. Looking forward to picking up a copy of the Three Mothers that Ms. Brown shared with us, and really appreciative for Ted's work, for Sam's support, for the entire MSU K-12 outreach team. I see Dr. Hamilton is with us today as well from our team. Just really appreciated all of the support. Please be on the lookout for our women's history programming and resource guide to should be hot off the press Monday or Tuesday. And so looking forward to that. Thank you again for everyone who's attended all of the sessions, and looking forward to doing something again exciting throughout the year around Black History Month. Appreciate each and every one of you. Please have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you, everyone.